Welcome to the Dissolutions podcast, brought to you by the Goethe Institute Ukraine. This series features artists from Eastern Europe, the Baltics, the South Caucasus, and Central Asia, reflecting on their work, local contexts, and what it means to be an artist today. The podcast is part of Dissolutions, Decolonial Encounters, a program exploring post-colonial practices across art, culture, and civil society.
Inga Erdmane is a Latvian artist based in Riga. She studied psychology in Riga and documentary photography at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. Her practice explores the intersection of the individual experience and collective structures, often working across installation, video, photography, and artist books. Drawing on archival research, found materials, and socially engaged methods, she reinterprets historical narratives and everyday realities. Recurring themes in Erdmane's work include migration, marginality, urban transformation, and the residues of post-Soviet ideologies. She is especially interested in grey zones, liminal or forgotten spaces, and the individuals who inhabit them.
Okay, starting point is always real events or people. Sometimes I work with archive material, found footage, as I'm interested in power structures, people who are in gray zones, marginalized. One project I did with probation service, I gave disposable cameras and I was saying, just go and take pictures and then we discuss what they look at it. And I call the project The Pleasure of Ignorance. It was somehow to make them feel free and not restricted by any kind of rules.
Although trained as a documentary photographer, she emphasizes that her approach goes beyond documentation.
While I was studying in The Hague, I came across this duo, Bloomberg and Chinarin, how they approach, also work with photography, but looking deeper what's behind the just depicted image. They also work in prisons and in psychiatric hospitals. They look at them in critical way, and that's why I like about these ideas. For different projects, I'm looking at different artists, what inspires me. Now, one guru I'm following.
During the Dissolutions residency in Central Asia, Erdmane is artists including Uzbek photographer and filmmaker Umida Akhmedova and Kazakh artist Zoliya Suleimanova. The trip also deepened her interest in historical links between Latvia and Kazakhstan, where many Latvians were deported during Soviet times.
It was a really impressive trip. We started in Uzbekistan. Through Tashkent, we went to Samarkand and Bukhara and Khiva, old Silk Road. Super rich history, old traditions and culture. Then we went to Munich, where was Aral Sea. Of course, the Aral Sea is not there anymore. And it was like, wow. It was like a feeling that we reached the end of the world. Because here in Latvia, almost every person is so deeply connected to the Baltic Sea. And we were talking about this feeling, how it could be waking up one day and the sea is gone. That was a really deep emotional moment. In Almaty, we met with the artist Zoliya Suleimanova, and we find connecting points. Her grandfather was deported to Aral Sea. It is beginning of 20th century. Now I'm doing research here in Latvia. A lot of people were deported also to Kazakhstan. I would like to find traces, and then we will seek a way how to go back to Kazakhstan and complete the project.
Erdmane believes such trips are essential for fostering genuine exchange in regions once bound together under Soviet rule.
Now we see what processes you are going through. We could understand you much better, because when we speak with the people in Western Europe, they don't get understanding what these processes means. This project between Caucasus, Central Asia and Baltic states is really important that we could support each other. I was really grateful that I'm a part of this program. It was really intense trip because it was so short in the 3 countries and they are huge. And we saw all similarities at the same time, how different you are from each other. but also seeing the similarities between us and you during the process of getting rid of imperialistic Russian influence.
Tallinn-based artist Jaanus Samma studied printmaking at the Estonian Academy of Arts, where he was introduced to traditional graphic techniques such as lithography, etching, and even sewing. Yet, as he admits, these methods did not initially ignite his passion.
But I do like drawing, and this is something I also use. I think it has been developed more and more into the direction to traditional techniques, and I work with different crafts, mostly in Estonia, but it can be also people from Poland and Latvia. This is something fascinates me at the moment. I see medium part of the idea. Those historic techniques have so much to now when everything is so technology-based.
Jaanus explained that his artistic practice is rooted in research, often historical in nature. Each project differs in both theme and medium. While he finds inspiration from museology, ethnography, and folk traditions, he is also interested in reimagining queer perspectives and experimenting with a wide range of techniques.
My projects are research-based projects, usually historical research of some particular topic or medium. Topic-wise, I'm interested of museology, ethnography, folk. I'm looking ways to add some queer voice. Every project is different from previous, and also medium-wise, I play around with big variety of different techniques and mediums. I'm very interested of traditional techniques like textiles, metal, leather, but it can be also video or photo.
Reflecting on Estonia's history of shifting powers and hierarchies, he described how working with traditional craft patterns allows him to reinterpret stories that were rarely told by Estonians themselves.
When I think about, for example, traditional craft in Estonia, historically it's been part of different countries like Sweden or Denmark or Russia, but all those hundreds of years starting from 13th century, it's always been like German noblemen who were landowners, let's say, until First World War. Class and hierarchy was always there. Estonians were never high positions in society, and they didn't write the history. It was always written different perspectives, either from Russian perspective or German's perspective and so on. When I use textile techniques that Estonians used to do in their farmhouses, I'm using those patterns and symbols that they like to use, definitely more abstract way. They were telling their side of the story. I am interpreting those historical materials in my work as well. This is a question of hierarchy and class.
This reflection naturally led him to broader question of history and power. Jaanus shared his observation of the term colonialism, noting that in Estonia, the Soviet past is more often described as occupation. For him, the word colonialism feels deeply tied to the experience of America, Asia, or Africa. Still, Estonians continue to confront their past, particularly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. What once seemed neutral, a Soviet star, or portraits of Peter I and Catherine II in an exhibition, now requires critical context and justification. In his view, society has grown more sensitive to these symbols of power and history.
And I'm not so aware of the nuances of the big topic of colonization and different definitions of what I've experienced is that people use this word differently. For example, when we talk in Estonia of our Soviet past, then we don't use that much the word colonization. We use the word of occupation. We could use maybe the word when we think of German invasion, I don't know, in 13th century onwards, but it goes too far back, let's say. Colonization, the word and the definition is so much loaded with Western countries' experience in 16th, 17th, 19th, 18th century of their colonizing America or Africa. And how to use this definition locally is maybe the question, and maybe that's why it hasn't been used so much. But it doesn't mean that we don't work with our history and different hierarchies in the past, different questions of power and politics. Yes, we still work with our Soviet past, especially again after the big invasion in Ukraine in 2022. Obviously, we already had removed all the Lenin and whatever sculptures in the city. Now it was more critically looked into Soviet symbols like Red Star or some minor monuments that were now being removed. I think this is a process that is still going on. It used to be very neutral to have in art exhibition a portrait of Peter I or Catherine II. But now it's not that you can't show it, you really need a good reason to show it. So I think people here are more tender of those questions when it comes to history with Russia.
Jaanus traveled to Central Asia in the autumn of 2024 as a participant of Dissolution's residency that took place in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. His first visit to Central Asia, long dreamt of especially for its rich craft traditions, became a powerful encounter with artisans who had preserved their knowledge across generations.
This was my first visit to Central Asia, but I have long dreaming to go there, especially to Uzbekistan, because of the craft and the techniques they do there. Very, very special and with such a long history. It was already on my map in a way. Even though I knew a little bit about the area, it was still very, very surprising and so much new information, so much learning during those 2 weeks. And it was a very, very special experience. Definitely visiting many artisans. We saw the workshops, and I think this was the most interesting part to hear and to see how they work, and also to hear the stories that they told that, I'm doing this, I'm the 7th generation of doing this in my family, and my children are also doing this technique, for example. And we heard it so many times, and I think this is something very unusual worldwide, let's say. They really kept the knowledge and forwarded to their children. So this was my main occupation in Bukhara. But I also visited places where I could see old historic textiles and carpets, some antique shop, which was also interesting.
Visiting Central Asia unfolded to him how the shared Soviet past resonates differently. Every country in the region is rewriting its narratives and building national identities through visual culture in a unique way. Comparing it to Estonia's own processes of reclaiming and redefining its history, he noted both parallels and differences.
I was born in Soviet Union, and people I met also were born in the same country. Those similarities and some part of the history we shared. And this was very interesting to go in quite far from my home and to see even the same objects, Soviet production. Some part of the experience as well. The system was general, collective farms. But I think this was interesting to think about similarities and differences. Also architecturally, to see different interpretation of Stalinist architecture. We looked back to European classicist ideas of what is beautiful, and to see Central Asian interpretation, for example, for this, or modernism as well. When I came back to home, I started to notice our interpretation of this, which I took as a kind of normal and natural. I started to notice Estonian particularities in these fields. For me, it was interesting to see in Kazakhstan how the growth of national iconography came about, national identity, as I understood. That's a question of surviving, because after Russia became again more territorial with their neighbors, it is very important to each country to be more concrete about their nation and the differences from Russia as well. This kind of process is a lot of rewriting history from different perspectives and storytelling. In Estonia, it started when Estonia became independent, when country developed their own, let's say, visual identity. It was all about, making it up, basically. And it was interesting to see this process in Kazakhstan, especially. And what are the myths and what are the stories that a country likes to underline. It's a similar process, but of course it takes completely different forms, and the story is different. The methodology of the process is basically the same.
These impressions from Central Asia prompted him to reflect on parallels with Estonia, where artists have also grappled with questions of history, identity, and the role of contemporary art. Looking back, he observed that Estonian art in the late 90s and early 2000s was strongly political and focused on local issues. Today, it's more attuned to global ecological and political questions, reflecting Estonia's place within the European Union.
Estonia is more and more part of the EU and less about what's happening locally here. We see our decisions, they are not part of the big play. I think in generally things are okay. We have a liberal government. Artists and writers are not censored by the government. And when I think about Estonian art, then I'm thinking and comparing always what is happening globally and still more Western countries, because this is where our connection mostly are. When I do exhibitions internationally, I do in Europe or sometimes in States, but never in Asia. This is somehow a reality. I am very curious what is happening also elsewhere, but we don't have so much connections. That's why also Central Asia is such an interesting place that he looks in both sides.
For him, art is not only a tool to examine such histories, but also a way of imagining alternative realities, especially in a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence. While AI may provide answers, he believes art remains irreplaceable because it teaches us how to ask questions creatively and offers a kind of value that technology cannot replicate.
We need to be creative. Art allows us to imagine realities and ways of living. Even when I think what AI has taught us, artificial intelligence, now everybody are using, it can answer in every question almost, and much better way than any human being. Then it becomes more and more important. How do you ask those questions? You have to be really creative to work with this kind of new technology that is here to stay. And the other part is that this is the only thing, the art, the culture is the only thing that I cannot replace. From my perspective, definitely believe that art is important and it gives us something that we need.
You've been listening to the Dissolutions podcast. Follow us for more stories. In our next episode, we will feature artists Amasya Niziblan, Anna Kun, and Sopo Kashakashvili.